Hey guys, in this video we'll be continuing with the Python video tutorials. I will be going over how to handle multiple exceptions in Python. So sometimes when you have a try suite and you're trying to see if the code will be capable of throwing one type of exception, you may encounter more than one type, and sometimes you may have not had a except clause to handle that as well. So basically for every type of exception you need to write an except clause for each type of exception that you want to handle. There's also, you can just handle a general exception. You can have like a default case pretty much. So any exception that will be thrown will be handled in a default case. So I'll show you guys how to do that. So we'll do an example code to handle a few different types of exceptions. So this code will try for some code, and we'll catch, we'll accept basically an IO error, a value error, and just a general except case. So basically it's either going to handle an IO error, it's going to handle a value error, and if it encounters an exception other than those two, which basically is any exception, then it will just handle it. So I'll show you guys how to do that. So here we'll just have a main function as usual. So here we'll have just a total points to 0.0. So underneath that we'll have our try block. Then we'll have we'll say infile points to open. We'll open a file path. So here I'll just enter a file path for a Windows PC. I'll enter my file path. And then we'll open it in read mode, so we'll just use the string and then put an R inside. A string literal basically with an R inside. So we'll use a for loop here. We'll say for line in file. So it's going to loop through the file line by line. We're probably going to use the so this is one way to loop through a file. We've done this example before in the IO part of this series. If you haven't seen that, check it out, because you might be lost at this point, because I won't be explaining this again. So we'll just have for line in file. We can say amount points to casted float to line. So we're going to convert the data from a string to a float. And we'll say total points to, actually total plus equals. So total, which means total points to total plus amount. And at the end we'll just close the file. Then after that we'll just print out the total, so we'll just say print. We can just actually call the format function. We'll format total. We'll format total, and then we'll pass comma dot 2f to format it. And then after all that, we'll get out of the try block, and then we'll have an accept block. We'll basically handle the IO error. And we'll say print. We'll just say that an error, just say that error occurred trying to open file. We can also basically, now we can handle more than one exception by just listing them below each other, so we can have another block, except block here, and we'll just say we want to handle a value error now. So then here we'll print, we can just print out error. Did I spell that wrong up here? So we'll say error occurred, value error. You can just say error occurred. Whoops. We can change this to say that it was an IO error. This one was a value error. And if it's not one of those, then we'll just have this is the default case here, so we'll just say accept. So all you have to say is accept. Pretty much any other exception that occurs, we'll just say that print an exception error occurred. So this is the default case. And then after all that, we'll just call main. So basically we just have this total variable here. We're going to try for some code. That's the way I just think of it. Try some code, and if there's an exception, then we'll handle it with these except blocks. So say, okay, we're gonna try to open this file with a file object. So in file points to this path, we're gonna open it in read mode. And then we're gonna say, okay, well, for line in file. I think this can be an error because there probably will be an error because there's just not all the data is numerical. So if we try to cast a string to a float, we're going to get an error, which will probably hit the value error exception. So we can just run it. So actually what we can do, let's set a breakpoint this time. So I'll set a breakpoint here in main. I'll save it and hit the debug icon in the top right corner. So we'll step in. So def main total points to 0.0. So we'll see the variable here, total points to 0.0. It's a float. Try block I'll step in. So in file is going to point to this path. It's going to say that we have this file at this path with some more information. So okay, so now for line in file, we'll step in. So line is going to point to the first line. So it just reads it line by line. If you loop through a file like this, for variable in the file, it just goes line by line, and line points to each thing on each line starting at the top of the file. Every time you iterate, the next iteration gets the next line. So amount's going to point to, so it's going to try to cast this code string to a float here. That's going to give us a value error right away. So as you can see, there is an exception. So it's like, okay, well, Python interpreter saying that we have a string, and you're asking me to convert it to a float. Well, I can't, so that's an exception. Instead of the program crashing, we have a handle. In this case, it doesn't loop back up here once it handles it, but at least it handles it for now. So it's okay. So it's going to say, okay, well, we're going to print the data, which is this string. It's going to say, okay, to the user, an error occurred, value error. I'll click on the debugger button again, and after that, there's no more code. It doesn't fix it. Later on, we'll fix it. We can loop back, fix it, get the right input, all that, and continue from where we had the exception. But right now, that's just showing you how we handled the exception. That's all we did. I'll step over, and the program's done. So here it's saying that process finished with exit code 0, meaning that there was no error because we handled it. So if we didn't handle it, it would have given you the exit code 1, which is a system error. So that's the example. Basically, since it's converting this float, it's converting that string to a float, we're getting an exception, so this logic would have to be changed. We could maybe point this to like str points to some empty string, amount points to, we can concatenate all the strings or something instead, and we wouldn't get an error or an exception. So now we can use one except clause to catch all exceptions. So sometimes you might want to write a try except block that simply catches any exception that is raised in the try suite, regardless of the exception's type. So I'll show you guys how to do that. I think we pretty much already did that. Actually, we don't even really need to go over that. We don't need to, because this is the same code. So basically all it is just we take these out. You guys get the idea that this is a default case, right? So this except block handles any exception that isn't these two. So any other exception, basically any other exception other than these two exceptions, IO error and value error, then this except block will handle any other exception. So if we just delete these, this should work. So we'll just run it. There, it's saying exception error occurred because once again it was trying to convert this string to a float, and the string wasn't a numerical string. It was just the string CODE, code with a capital C. So it tried to convert that to a float. In that case, an exception was raised. The code jumped to this except block here, printing an exception error occurred, and the program ended in that case. So there you go. We'll be continuing in the next tutorial. and we'll show how to display an exception's default error message. So thanks for watching. If you guys like the channel, you can subscribe to the channel and like the channel if you'd like for more programming and investing videos, tutorials, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Take care.